Okay, hello and welcome. Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the country. So glad to have you all with us today. I'm Jason Eckert, the Chief Operating Officer for Vision Serve Alliance, and I am really excited to present Jenna Dreyer, our presenter today. So let me give a little bit of background here. As the president of the Lighthouse of Houston, Jenna leads the organization in achieving its mission to support people who are blind or have low vision. Jenna was recently elected to the Vision Serve Alliance Board of Directors, and we are really proud to have her. She has over 28 years in the not-for-profit sector. She's built strong relationships with donors, partners, and stakeholders, dedicating her career to underserved communities and populations. Originally from Nebraska, Jennifer has lived in Texas for 23 years with her husband Troy and her two children. She's an advocate for volunteering. She has served on various boards, enjoys outdoor activities, sports, baking, and family time. Jenna is honored to work alongside the board, staff, and volunteers to advocate for accessibility and opportunities for all of those the Lighthouse of Houston serves. The Lighthouse of Houston has recently embarked on a program to create fully accessible playgrounds for children who live with blindness and low vision and their families. This is an exciting development which we hope can be replicated across the country, and we are very excited to hear her presentation today. So I welcome all of you. I welcome Jenna, and Jenna, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the introduction. I don't remember if I gave that to you or if that was from LinkedIn. I don't know where it was from, but thanks. Grateful to be down in Texas versus up in Nebraska, who got hit by the snowstorm. I'm sure there's some of you guys on the call. Thanks to Jason. I know Lee's on the call, Wendy and Helen. I think she's managing the slides. So excited about everybody joining today. This park and playground project, really for us, as you read, is and was for us originally a vision for inclusive and accessible play. Okay, so I wanted to mention what our vision and our mission was. When I first got here 5.5 years ago, the organization had never had a strategic plan. We knew that we needed to address what our actual mission was, which honestly I can't tell you what it was 5 years ago because we changed it through a strategic planning process with the board and a number of stakeholders, including staff and also people from the community, to create our vision and our mission. I'll start with our mission. That's our day-to-day work that we do here at the Lighthouse, and that is to enable and empower people who are blind or low vision to realize their full potential. The realize their full potential is what we work really hard at, and that's not just for human beings and staff members, but it's also for what we really say is people, places, and things. There's a lot more to just the person realizing their full potential. It's how does our building, how do our grounds, how does society realize their full potential when it comes to blind and low vision. Our vision is a life without limits for people who are blind or low vision. And so this is the piece for us and the board where we think bigger and broader and more strategically on the things that we want to do that will impact the greater community or the greater good. And that greater community can include everybody who's touched by vision loss, but also society in general. So that's really where the park came about. And if you want to flip to the next slide. So our park was really born through how do we create a life without limits? Well, we have property here at the Lighthouse of Houston. We like to say we're property rich. We have still several acres on site here. And if any of you have been to the Lighthouse of Houston, you know that our building in general is fairly large. And then on our property, adjacent to our physical building where we employ people on premium business service jobs to all the rehabilitation services that we have that are really a comprehensive approach to the onset of somebody getting vision loss, getting behavioral health, to low vision, to what I like to say is if you can get to the point where you're partying with us in our social activities, then you've gone through the spectrum of services. So we have two separate facilities that are activities of daily living facilities, and that's where our orientation mobility specialist performs a number of different ADL or IDL classes and O&M. So next to that property, we have about an acre of property. And so as a board, when we decided and staff that we wanted, excuse me, that we wanted to stay in the River Oaks area, which is basically next to the heart of downtown, we're very accessible by public transit and really in the middle of the greater Houston area. When we decided we wanted to stay, we looked at the rest of our property and said, what else do we need? And when we look at our vision, what else is it that we wanted to do? And so it started with our vision to create a life without limits and to create a greater impact on the low vision and blind community. And so we had always kind of had this idea, what if we built a park or a playground on site that not only the kiddos that we serve, but kiddos and the school districts in the area that have kids with disabilities, and then of course specifically people that are blind or low vision. But if we think about the adults that are blind or low vision in our communities, and we think of them as a parent, and if they have a sighted or a blind child, how do they go to a park and swing their kid? And so it just morphed into this really, I think, innovative initiative to not just build something for the greater Houston area, but if we're going to do this, how do we create a life without limits? And that was, we're going to have to partner with national playground manufacturers and national park developers so that they could get behind, well, if we just look through the lens of somebody blind and low vision, then parks and playgrounds would be fully accessible. And I think that most of you probably can identify a park in your area that is labeled as inclusive or accessible. And I worked for the Y for 20 years. We built what we thought were inclusive and accessible playgrounds. And the school districts that I worked for, we built accessible playgrounds there. And playgrounds really in the last probably 10 years have become more inclusive and more accessible. And that really has been through the lens of the autistic family. If you think about creating an area that is sensitive to sensory, parks have gotten better and they are better and they are labeled more as inclusive. But then when you take a step back and you look through the lens of the community that we serve, the blind and low vision, is it accessible if a piece of equipment is swinging back and forth like a swing or a merry-go-round? How is that fully accessible for a parent or a child to just hop on? It's not. So that's where we started was, okay, what are the things that we need to identify? We identified that we want to make sure that this park and playground provokes accessible and inclusive play. But again, we need to look through the lens of blind and low vision people, that community, adults and children. We want them to be able to play on everything that's in a playground. And that's not, you can't do that right now. I mean, you could, but it's going to be, you might need somebody right next to you. You might need, it might be a little bit unsafe. So we looked at this park as an opportunity to initiate and challenge our team with, would your child or as a parent, would you go do that? And if you can't, how do we change that? And so working with the playground manufacturers, we went through a whole slew of conversations about what could make something safe and accessible. So that accessible and inclusive play was a big deal. And then we looked at it and said, well, even in schools, we know that well-being and being outside and being exposed to the outdoors, that has a great benefit to our health, our well-being, our learning, our development. And so we looked at this park as, how do we create this national standard and this model for an inclusive playground area so that kids and parents who are blind or low vision, and really people with disabilities, can go play? Because right now they may not may not think that they can go to a park or playground, even if it's inaccessible. And then, of course, we knew that this initiative would challenge the barriers that are presented to a person with a disability, specifically blind and low vision. And then, of course, in this project, our goal was to how do we design everything based on these gaps that we learned through meeting with these different stakeholders. And then ultimately, I mean, obviously, our ultimate goal is we want safe play and we want it to be fully and truly accessible. We want this to create a national standard, which is why when we were developing this idea or this initiative, the only way we were going to be able to move forward was if we found a national playground developer and a national playground manufacturer. And then we just fell upon a nonprofit organization that helps nonprofits and schools raise money to create accessible play, but they had never looked through the lens of somebody blind or low vision. So now we've challenged 3 national companies to not just look through the lens, but create this best practice so that it's not an option not to. We obviously know that it's ADA laws are super minimal and they don't exist for parks and playgrounds. So of course, all those I would say newer adaptations for parks and playgrounds that are related to ADA, those are all included in our park, but not all parks have that. Some schools do, but not all. So you might be thinking, all right, well, I mean, for us, it's about people that are blind or low vision and creating this national standard and serving this community and giving them this safe space to play in. But it's more than that, right? I mean, people that have disabilities, you can see the charts. I mean, 1 in 4 adults has a disability, with 15% of children in our country receiving some sort of special education service. That's a huge number. For the greater Houston area, it's over 1.2 million students, 0 to 22, are receiving some sort of benefit or service from the special education department. And so for us, we have a great relationship with it's called Region 4 in Texas. And there's millions of students there. Obviously, you can see if there's 1.2 million students that are in that ARD or IEP category, how many students that we have access to or that would have access to us. So we know that this park is going to be available to our general group of people with disabilities and families. But clearly it's going to benefit significantly people that are blind or low vision. In our area, again, in Region 4, there's over 2,100 kids. About 200 or 300 of them are deaf blind. And then, the 1,900 or so are blind or low vision from 0 to 22. And then in our greater Houston or greater Gulf Coast area, there's about 165,000 adults. And I think you all know that the majority of people that are blind or low vision obviously are made up by adults. So if you think about a park, how does a newly blind parent go to the park with either their sighted child or a blind child and swing safely on a swing set, or go jump on a merry-go-round, or climb up the monkey bars? I mean, it's just, they don't believe it's in their cards. So, I mean, that's what ultimately we were motivated by, was our community really deserving of the opportunity to play outside and to have these experiences. Mostly for our adults, from what they've been able to do most of their whole life, right? As a sighted person. But as a blind person, it ends up becoming a barrier. And then I'm not going to go over the other stats. I think most of you guys on this call are probably very familiar with the big data project. And by the way, we're doing another big data project. So if any of you are so inclined to want to help us with that project, we are accepting donations to that. Shameless plug, Jason and Lee.
Thank you.
But this data is really, really important. to what we do as nonprofit agencies serving the blind and low vision community. But you can see the numbers. It's over 8.7 million adults are experiencing some sort of vision loss, and that number is not getting any lower. So how do we create these spaces within our community? Our parks, our playgrounds, our buildings, the people that work for us, society in general, our partners. How do we get them to realize their full potential? And this is just one of what we believe is a small but maybe large impact that we could potentially have. And then obviously we want to make sure that we are creating an opportunity for an impact on standardizing how parks and playgrounds should be built across this country. And we believe we've chosen the right partners for that. Okay, so I mean, to me, this stuff is obvious. It's all about, our expected outcomes and benefits, and we will have with we're building Salesforce out right now for our client database. We will have an opportunity to survey folks. So we're hoping down the road, once families start utilizing the park, that we can get some of these outcome-based questions back. But I mean, we want them to have the opportunity to fully participate. And again, if you think about it, in most of the parks and playgrounds that are in your neighborhoods or schools, or even the parks that that are more accessible now because they look through the lens of an autistic family, they're still not. They're better, but they're still not. So how do we get them to fully participate? That we believe is really going to improve their well-being. We know that most of at least our adults, we know that they're more isolated at home after they get a diagnosis and they go through a depression period and they maybe don't want to go back to work and they don't think they can do anything. But man, what if there was a great place where maybe people could see them or not see them and they could go, take their kids to this all-inclusive accessible park that, one, they're not going to be judged, and two, that they can actually participate on. They can swing their own kid. And then we do feel like that this is going to create a bigger, broader, connected and supported community, not just for our blind and low vision folks, but our community in general, understanding that people that are blind or low vision, they're deserving of the opportunity. They're looking for people to really understand, one, what they go through, and two, what they're capable of. So that awareness and understanding is a big deal for us. And then obviously the caveat to that would be that, there's advancement in knowledge and more innovation, not just with the park and playground, but how do we challenge ourselves as either organizational leaders or with the partners that we have with companies or businesses to look through the lens of somebody blind or low vision, and it will change how you work. It will change how you do business, and it will better your work and better your life and better your circumstance for it. So it's a lot more for us than just the park and playground. Okay, now I think we get into the super kind of fun, exciting stuff. So I'll kind of breeze through this stuff, and then I'll pull out some things, and then I think what's more probably where it'll come out is when we go to the next slide and actually show you how these things were put into place. But these are just some of the examples of, well, what does make this one of a kind? And I know Jason's probably not on mute right now, so he can chime in. But I did as much research as I could to try to find out, is there anything closely related to what we're trying to do across this country? And Jason's like, oh, I've got it. I got somebody you've got to meet. He designed everything for New York City. He's got the guide for, inclusive parks and playgrounds. And listen, at the Y, I build accessible parks and playgrounds as well on properties that were specifically designed for people with disabilities. It was under the premise of Miracle League. If some of you guys know about the baseball league and the Miracle League, those are the parks and playgrounds that we developed at the Y. But I look back on that park and playground and I'm like, it's nice. It's wheelchair accessible. It's nice. It is nowhere near being fully accessible for a family experiencing vision loss. And so Jason and I met with this individual, and I mean, I was excited, but then also like, oh, darn it, we are the only ones. That's sad. Like this is a big national movement. But again, think about the family of people experiencing autism, and the fact that this one nonprofit, Unlimited Play, has made such headway in how parks and playgrounds are built through the lens of an autistic family. I'm like, we can do this. We can do this together. Lighthouse of Houston can't just be the only ones that do this. We need your help, and then obviously the people out there that are actually building these things. So anyway, so what we found out from that visit that Jason had was that, lo and behold, I mean, we believe this is a one of a kind, and hopefully the first one of a kind. And then there's many after that. And so, looking through the lens of a family experiencing vision loss, we wanted to make sure that we included, sensory, auditory, tactile, experiential pathways. I'm literally just reading the things off this list, the social areas, the quiet areas. And again, some of those things are being developed more now because of the sensory related to autism and the fact that we need more quiet areas. But how do we add more wayfinding and directional signage and just the different levels of play? As I mentioned, it'll have everything that's kind of standard now. If you were going to build an accessible park or playground, there are ADA rules for that on the height of the big playgrounds if they're going to be wheelchair accessible. So that is all incorporated into this park and playground. What sets it apart is that objects that move will have a sound feature. It's either a rattle or a whistle or a shake or something. So if it's a swing set, if some of you are old enough like me, most of our swing sets were like, I mean, they just creaked, and somehow somebody'd still get pelted on the way back. So those sound features will be included on any movable object, mostly our swings and the merry-go-rounds and some of our other spinny objects. We had an intentional use of color contrast, and the slide that we're not going to go to quite yet, but the slide that I show you next, it's not our actual full design, but one of the pieces is, and I'll show you some of the color contrast that we used, and that came out of our stakeholder group that was our blind and low vision team members. They had varying levels of sight, and our O&M instructor, and then a VI instructor or teacher as well. So there's an intentional use of color contracts, which, sort of the challenge to that is you may not end up with a playground that, if you wanted a playground that's all brown, well, that's not going to make any sense. Even one color, if that's what you were looking for and somebody needed, I want my playground to be all red. Well, that's not super accessible to somebody blind or low vision. So we had an intentional use of color contrast working with the playground manufacturers. And that I sat back and listened and learned, and was educated on what that looks like for somebody blind and low vision. And we know that can vary as well, but my team got very particular on, well, we like these colors and these work well together. This is what we're doing. And then of course we're adding directional, I call it directional signage. I'm not sure if that's what everybody else says, but the tactile surface signage that we're using has not only different color, but it has different textures. And I'll kind of show you guys what that looks like and describe it as I'm kind of walking you through that. But we wanted to make sure that somebody that was a cane user could feel it's that there's some sort of change there, and what is that? And of course, all the different map signage and the technology signage that we're using, it will describe all of those things. Hey, when if you're walking along with your cane, it will be a slat, semi-rough surface. And if something becomes rougher and feels like molded mulch, then that will tell you where you're at in certain areas. So that's the way we're using some of the surface signage. And then of course we'll have tactile maps in different areas at the front of the playground or at the front of the park entrances. And then of course throughout the playground. And then you'll notice that the playground, where the playground features are, they're actually in a circular shape. That was probably one of the most unique things that was brought up by one of our VPs, Shelly Zander, who was actually going to be the one talking about this, but she had something else going on, was that we know that people that are blind or low vision learn, like if they're eating, right, they learn based on a clock. Something's at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, so forth. And so we thought, well, my God, why wouldn't we build this playground in a circular fashion? And then we can use that as a learning and an education opportunity as well. And then when Helen sends this out to everybody, you'll be able to click on it. But we have a partnership with Right Here. It's an orientation, facility orientation. It could be outside, it could be inside. They're pretty incredible, but we'll be using technology throughout the park. So people with their phones will be able to basically orient and navigate the entire park. Our restroom, really the unique aspect of the restroom, not just the art that'll be around it, but we will have an adult changing room, which is pretty rare, and not necessarily an ADA requirement. And so we'll have a very large adult changing area, and then of course a youth changing area, plus having the tactile signage, which we're actually going to be doing throughout our building. We're pretty excited about it. That the restrooms will be laid out. They'll be 3D printed, but they'll be tactile signage, so they'll know where everything is at. That is probably what I hear the most about when I travel with my colleagues who are blind or low vision is, can you tell me where everything is in the bathroom? I just need to know where everything is. And I'm like, my God, why don't we have little tactile signages? I mean, that'd be brilliant, right? So we'll be building that. And of course, Braille signs, we'll have a service dog relief area. The park will be fenced in. We'll have digital access to it. So people will be able to go to our website. You guys come to town, you go to our website. It basically gives you, we track who you are. You'll probably annually have to go back in and renew your access. But we have cameras on the site as well, pretty sophisticated cameras. But you'll be able to enter in either just tapping your phone and then heading into the park. Although we are in a very affluent area of Houston and we're right next to downtown, we do have some concern about our park being exposed, which is why we fenced it into some other populations that might frighten some of our blind and low vision folks if they're just hanging out in that area, and they shouldn't be. So we will include sensory gardens. We've been working with our local arboretums to make sure we're putting in the right plants and trees and what do you call it, annuals and perennials that will live in our area, but also that they'll be able to smell and enjoy those things. Benches, there's a maze, which we added kind of last minute. I'll show you where that's at. And then there's going to be an art wall. And the art wall is being designed and completed by Brady Smith. He's an actor, a director, a wonderful human being who's donated many years worth of volunteering when he was younger in Houston. You would all know him if you Google him. You can say Brady Smith, but he's married to Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who was the 90210 star. So he's like, everybody knows my wife. So he's going to be doing a lot of our artwork, and you can't see it in my office, or maybe kind of kitty corner, but there's he designed a print for us, and we use that for a lot of donations. We have like 400 of these prints. He's just a wonderful human being. And then, of course, security enhancements. Not going to go over a lot of the programming. I think that probably should seem obvious to most folks. Again, we have tons of services that we offer here, all ages, all stages of vision loss through their entire journey. So we'll incorporate a lot of the programs that'll use it. Our staff are super excited because they'll be able to walk the track. We'll have parties and events and allow it for rentals as well. So, all right. If you want to go to the part everybody's probably been waiting for. Okay. I am pretty sure, guys, I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure I alt texted this. If I didn't, I apologize. Shame on me, but I think it's alt texted. So this is not finalized. It is on about an acre of property. There are two entrances to this park. And so using the clock feature, there's an entrance on the the southeast corner, and that's at the 4 o'clock entrance to the playground area. The other entrance, you'd have to come in on the southwest side, and you would travel down because there's one whole half of it is playground. The other half of it is just grass and green play area. Our ultimate goal there was to be able to have all the different Paralympic sports that we want to teach, and we want families to be able to come and enjoy the grassy area. So we'll have goal ball, we'll have blind soccer. We have some folks in Houston that do blind tennis for us. We have blind fencing. Anything you name it, we've got access to a number of different sports and fun little activities that we'll have there. So I'm just going to describe, I'm going to start at that 4 o'clock entrance, which again will be a maglock feature. You would tap your phone or you have a code that you would put in. So you enter in at that 4 o'clock. There are a ton of things that are art related that will be different, that will also offer some tactile features that when somebody is even sitting somewhere, there might be something behind them that might be tactile related that they could have fun with. So again, it's a clock. It takes up a little tiny bit more than half of the acre. And it spans basically north to south, almost to the front and the back of the piece of property of that acre. And then again, the east and west, it's that circular clock, and it stops about midway through that whole acre property. And then the whole left-hand side of it, left-hand side to me, which would be the west side, is all the grassy area. So entering it at 4 o'clock. And again, these are not this design that I'm looking at that's got the full picture. It doesn't have the new on the upper right quadrant of this slide that actually has the playground that's still actually not fully designed or fully approved, but it's more of the color contrast that we're using. So if you were to take that and drop that into where the clock that I'm talking about now, the playground features, that's what has the different directional signage. So you walk in, it's kind of a gray walking trail. That walking trail will go around the circular clock. There's 3 quadrants to this part or to this playground, and they all meet in the middle to a centralized red and white lighthouse. And that very top of that lighthouse will actually have a light feature that the kids can move on a spinning wheel. That lighthouse feature, when you walk in at 4 o'clock and you want to go straight ahead or dead ahead to that lighthouse feature, if you walked into that lighthouse feature, it has a dome that echoes. So we wanted to make sure that we allowed opportunities for all sorts of different experiences. And at Intercontinental at Bush Airport in Houston, they have one of these dome areas, and it is so fascinating that we thought, man, wouldn't that be cool if our kiddos and our parents got to experience that? So on the quadrant that is kind of the upper right, that's in between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, that is where we have, it's a big swing set area. And that actually just got extended. So when you walk along that 4 o'clock path, you will be able to fill with your cane or see that I can walk into this purple area. And if I walk next to, I think that's green. I'm not sure exactly what that color is, but there's 2 or 4 trails that would lead you to the swings. There will be, and it's really hard to see in this, but there's this kind of compacted mulch that's another color contrast that is basically has a square, and that's where you would stop if you were a parent or a kiddo that was blind or low vision and wanted to swing their friend or their kid. So kid gets on, parent gets on, whoever gets on, they start swinging. They know if I stay in this one spot and I listen to the swing coming back and forth to me, I will be able to swing my kid without getting clobbered. And so anyway, so on each of these different, you see there's like, or I guess some might be able to see, some I'll describe. So there's a bunch of like little circles that have, again, different color contrast. So you'll see these in some of them in teal. That just means that's a different play area. So I'd be able to walk into the other play area. It doesn't have a different texture contrast. We're using color there. So those other little features are like, climbing features or, a teeter-totter type swing or teeter-totter type feature. That's what's in that quadrant in between 1 and 4 o'clock. If I go counterclockwise and I go to the upper between 1 o'clock and the 9 o'clock, or I'm sorry, the 8 o'clock quadrant, that's the big, humongous playground feature that goes ground to top and is wheelchair accessible. The things that we've done to this playground that challenged the playground manufacturer was they had to put another set of tubing or piping, I guess, if you will, along the walkway so that somebody that's using their cane, so the cane doesn't drop off the edge of that, big playground feature that's got different feature plays. It's got 3 or 4 slides on it. So there's that tubing that basically, if they're using their white cane, it would stop them and say, okay, that's the edge, versus I'm walking along and my cane goes off. You have no idea, which would be more dangerous. So, and then the feature that they had to add, we challenged them on adding, there's a lip. If there's some sort of lip, I can't really describe it, but if they want to go down a slide, that they know, again, if they're using their feet or their hands or their cane, that, hey, there's a slide there, versus there's no evidence of, hey, there's a slide there, and all of a sudden I'm either on the ground or I'm going down the slide and didn't know I was going to be going down the slide. So there's those different types of features. And then the color contrast signage that we're using is the poles, I think, are all one color. I think the poles are all red. Every single pole in this playground is all red. So when they're listening to the directional signage via technology, they would know, anything that's red related is a pole that's going up and down to hold a structure in place. And then I don't remember what other, this is why I need Shelly. She's not here to help me out, but the other aspects of that big playground have a different color contrast. And then there's just some other fun little areas. There's a new cricket game that's coming out. That's in that lower quadrant between 4 and 8 o'clock. That was actually designed for the autistic family, and it's just got a ton of cool features, lots of sound elements. And then that's in that big purple kind of structure. And so what they'll do with that is, because that purple structure, purple area there is not yet connected to the walkways. So it will fan up and actually connect to the walkways so that somebody can enter it safely and then know that they're entering into a play area, versus going from the walkway to the gray. And then the last thing I'll talk about on here is, so in the circular area in that bottom quadrant, those are some of the spinning things. So it's a surface level merry-go-round, and that merry-go-round, the playground manufacturers are putting in a rattle feature to that structure. So as the merry-go-round starts going faster, you'll hear the rattle. As it slows down, you'll hear it tick, tick, tick down, and then the kid or the parent will know that they can enter onto it safely. And then there's, you can't see it really on here. Once we get the final design, we'll be able to kind of blow some of this stuff up. But there's, let's just say, like a foot or two of different texture, like the pour and play mulch, that's a different color that is around the perimeter of anything that moves. And so they'll hear the sounds, and then they'll be able to know that there's a change in, hey, something's happening here. I know I'm gonna come across something that's going, that's spinning around. So So that's the playground area. We're super excited about it. If you're leaving that upper quadrant that's between 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock at the very top of it, you come off that track, and that's kind of a crushed granite um, area that basically leads into all the picnic and the kind of rest areas. We have a really cool maze feature that we had them custom build. Again, it has the tubing or the piping at the bottom of it so that if somebody's walking through it, that their cane would hit it. But we thought, how cool would that be if a parent is okay with their kiddo going into a maze and getting lost in it? Would that normally happen if a blind parent or a sighted parent was taking a blind child or the other way around? And the answer is probably no. So we had that pretty cool feature to that area. Mostly in that back corner is all green space, so that's where the sensory area will be. We'll probably try to add sensory, the smell to a lot of that stuff, and even some of the plants and things that we're adding have some sound features to it, which is going to be pretty cool as well. But that whole side where the grassy area is going to have, just some trees. It'll have the doggy relief area, which is to the left, and that's where the restroom area is there as well. We're in Houston, so it'll have lots of shade structures, and there will be some mist features that'll be added. They're kind of in that little blue area. It's not a splash area. It'll just be some kind of misty things that toss off some nice cool water, or hot really for us. And then some of the artwork and things that we're working on is how do we add, how do we talk in Braille along some of these bigger features? Like there's a big trellis that's in that bottom playground quadrant. And we're talking about adding, either light in Braille or something that's just kind of a cool art feature that showcases Braille. So, and by the way, this you walk out the backside of our building on the north end, and you walk across the street, and this is where the playground is. So, Jason and Helen, I'm not sure. I mean, we've got what, 17 minutes left. I'm happy to stop here. I know we could probably stay here. There's some slides later that have my contact information, our podcast. We'd love for y'all to listen to our podcast. I know I've seen some questions pop up there that I'd be happy to answer. And any feedback that you have, there's still potential for me to change things in the design. Oh yeah, and this is our capital. I don't have to go into a whole lot of detail with this other than I just wanted to make sure y'all knew that we're raising money for this and that it is a very robust capital campaign structure. Two of our board members, they're both sighted, but they have, one has an adult deafblind son who has struggled finding playgrounds that they can go to, and one family has a teenager that's blind to low vision. And so they are our campaign co-chairs, and we're in the process of actually we're doing a documentary of this whole project, and some of them just did the filming. So we're not a super philanthropic organization at the Lighthouse of Houston. It is part of my ambition and drive to create a more philanthropic culture here. I think it's necessary for every nonprofit in this country. I don't care what kind of nonprofit you're with or run. They should be philanthropic. You should never deprive the community of the opportunity to give to a great cause. And we all run nonprofits that I believe the community needs to be more exposed to. And we feel like this project could catapult us into a little bit more exposure to the Lighthouse community, which is just going to benefit the people that we serve. So I won't go into any more detail about that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them there. Do you want to go back maybe to the park, Helen? And then yeah, and those are just all the links if you guys want to click to see who we're partnering with.
So one
Sure.
question was, will there be a lift or a system that can be used to put the adult on the change table?
I'm assuming But that is let me mark that down. Our architect on that project is on our board. So let me ask him that specific question.
And then another, do individuals need their own technology device to use the technology?
Yeah, they just use their phone. Yeah, they download the app that's non-invasive and free and open to the public. We'll use right here. So, and we'll use their markers AI, so that'll all be on there. So you'd literally just walk up to it and it'll capture everything and it'll tell you. We'll write all the narratives to that, so it'll tell you what and where everything is.
There was a question about how this project is funded, but you touched on that now. So you're fundraising for it. You did not get one large grant or anything like that.
Well, technically we did. We do have one named donor. The park will be named after her. Her name is Evelyn M. Mitchell. And a couple of years ago, we randomly got a very large, in the millions dollars worth of gift. And the executor of the state, when we met with them, we wanted to make sure that we recognized her in some way. And so we're naming her as our $1 million donor. So we're really looking to raise about 2.5 million, which will be a pretty big stretch for us just because we don't have that culture. But it's
Awesome.
getting a lot of attraction in the disability community for foundations that have not generally ever given to us because we've never asked. But there's a lot of foundations in the Houston area that give to accessible parks and playgrounds. So we're hoping to go
Awesome.
after them. And if anybody has any feedback, put it in the chat. If there's a foundation or a donor or somebody that you know might be interested in something like this, let me know.
Jenna, it's Jason. You talked about that there are some national partners. So of course, Vision Serve Alliance is always interested in building national relationships and once we have something that's quite successful at one of our organizations, for other organizations not to have to reinvent the wheel, right? That they can come to the organization that's already done a successful program, a successful
Yep.
project, and learn from them. So I guess there are two questions I'm going to ask. One is, so many of the features that you identified, tactile features, braille features, auditory features, color consistency, contrast consistency, right? Those are things that would help the population as a whole if they were consistent in the broadest sense possible. And there's a national partner, it sounds like, in parks and recreation that you're working with. I'm just wondering if they recommended these things, if they're taking your recommendations and and trying to spread them. I looked through all the names of people who are participating. Many of them have properties where I know they have recreational facilities, or they have
Nice.
schools, nursery schools or preschools, or schools that, let's say, go to third grade in their facilities where they might be in an urban setting, but they have a small area where they're putting a playground.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if you can talk more about the national partner and how you see this expanding.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So the three that we're specifically working with, SWA is they're actually I think they're worldwide, but let's just say national for now. They're a national um landscape developer. Landscape is super broad. It's parks, bayous, trails. Like they've done most of what's in Houston. They've done a ton of stuff on the east and west coast. They're all over the country. And they were very interested in working with us on this project, but also related to projects that if they get their hands on or they get bids where they're building a playground or a park, they will use what they've learned in this project as a best practice in those, they'll challenge their counterparts. And then All Play and Little Tykes. I think most of you guys probably have heard of Little Tykes, right? All
Mm-hmm.
Play and Little Tykes is a national playground manufacturer. So not all playground companies manufacture, right? So we wanted to choose a company that manufactures the product that could set the standard and say, well, we only build, this now with this feature. And because it's in, and this is why. So they're in probably all major cities. You can look them up to see what's in your area, but our reps could tell you who your rep would be, right? So that's a national playground manufacturer that can help set that challenge because really it's going to be them bringing it up, and they were all in. That's why we chose them. They were very interested in this, very willing to work with us because not every manufacturer is going to want to do this. This is a one-off, right? And now we're hoping for it to be more. And then Unlimited Play is the national nonprofit that specializes in working with organizations like us or the schools that you talked about, Jason, to raise money to build an accessible playground. But again, they had never looked through the lens. So now when they're building, they're saying, hey, listen, if you want to be fully accessible, you need to have, let's look at color contrast. We can still help with that. Like they can call us to consult, but they now pretty much know it. They also have a low vision professional that works for them. They're a small nonprofit. And then we're using their platform. They typically charge $10,000 for an organization to utilize their fundraising platform. So everything that you see on here will be chopped up and put into this fundraising platform so that when we go out to start fundraising, we're fundraising now, but when we go out to be more specific, that's what we'll show is their fundraising platform to be able to pull those things out. And then, what was happening behind the scenes in the greater Houston area was that the Houston Parks Board was working on a best practices guide, which Helen is it is several hundred pages long. It is a huge PDF. But they consulted with us and said, would you be involved in this project? And we said, we absolutely need to be involved in this project. Otherwise, you are not going to have an inclusive parks, trails, bayous, playgrounds, because you're not going to look through the lens of somebody blind or low vision. So the document that Helen has, which is not proprietary to the Houston Parks Board, we want to spread this to everybody. You'll see the Lighthouse's name on there. There were tons of stakeholders involved in creating a guide. Jason, it was probably very similar to what
The New York guide. Yep.
Yeah, what he wrote in New York City as a best guide, right? Best practices guide for inclusive parks, trails, bayous, so on and forth. Well, not everybody has a bayou, but that document was being built not alongside what we were doing. We just happened to have got involved at the right time to make sure that that's included in there. And so you all have access to that. But that's a minimal guide. In my opinion, you'd still want to call upon somebody that has built something that's got more of the features that are for blind and low vision. I mean, it's pretty detailed in there, like it talks about the directional signage, but some people might not really know what that is. And so if the Houston Parks Board or Parks and Rec or somebody gets a call, or our counties or cities in the area, they tell them all to call us. And then right now we're just pro bono having a conversation with them about, okay, look at the guide. Now here's how we can translate that for you. But that's available to everybody. Use it for anything. If you're building a garden, if you're doing landscaping outside your building and you're a blind and low vision agency, make it sensory. Do something that's going to be incorporated that was in this best practice. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it highlights, and I want to if there's other question, let somebody else speak, but I think it highlights that there are national partners on the not-for-profit level that are interested in this, national partners on the for-profit level. They may be focusing on disability, but not necessarily visual disability, right? And just as you said, I think that any organization that is close to a large municipality, and if that municipality has an office of disability or a mayor's office of disability or a county office of disability, the chances are good that there are some beginning documents on accessible areas within that municipality. And that's the first place to start to build some of these partnerships. So there'd be a government partnership, a not-for-profit partnership, a for-profit partnership, and then our organizations would be taking the lead in this sector of the disability community to make these parks accessible. Vision Serve Alliance it does have as one of its goals to sort of increase holistic health and increase the ability for people to participate in things and have rehabilitation services that are beyond just, can you do your ADLs and can you go to work? And so much of what you're talking about here really takes down the barriers that prevent people from doing some of those things, those additional things. Let me just open it up if someone wants to speak or if there's another comment that came through before we close. We've got about 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah, I have a question. That sounds like a great thing. Have you considered going on to Hadley and interviewed by like Ricky Anger or going to one of the um one of the webinars, where you can get a little more uh, exposure to this? Because this sounds wonderful.
Uh, Rick, can you drop something in the chat on the organization you're specifically referring to? Or if you have a connection to that, you're always welcome to grab my email and connect me. But yeah, I'll go talk in front of anybody. I mean, to me, this is, again, it's for us, it's more, yeah, we're going to do it in Houston, but we want there to be a movement.
Yep.
Well,
And we could,
this is Hadley School. I'm
Hadley
sure you're
School? I'm not
with
familiar.
Hadley School.
yeah, it's Jason. I'm more than happy to make that
Okay.
connection for you, Jenna.
Good.
Okay,
Hadley is one of Vision Serve Alliance members, and
Okay.
there are, of course, lots of national organizations, Hadley being one of them, that are probably interested in this topic. So, Rick, I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and Jenna, if you're
Thanks, Rick.
interested,
Yeah.
we can certainly push these things out. That's part of what the services that Vision Serve Alliance provides. So Jenna's a member, Hadley's a member, AER's a member, American Foundation for the Blind's a member. This is what Vision Serve Alliance does, and we're happy.
ATV,
We're happy to
NFB,
do
I
it.
mean, yeah,
Absolutely, Rick.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Awesome.
okay.
Thanks, Rick.
You're
All
you're
right,
you're
thanks.
you're giving us a great idea to move this forward for it to have a national platform.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got 1 minute to 3, so I will just wrap us up and thank Jenna for giving us her time for identifying this terrific project. Again, I saw so many folks on the call that I know have facilities with land, that I know have facilities with schools in them, and we are just very excited that the ideas that Jenna presented here, that they have developed at the Lighthouse of Houston, can move forward on a national platform. Please reach to me, reach to Jenna, and let's make this a project that has national awareness with the Lighthouse of Houston leading the way. We're all grateful, Jenna, for the work that you've done, and thank everybody for giving us time this afternoon.